Good afternoon, everybody. Today, I would like to start my speech off by asking you, the audience, to use some imagery. I want you to start off by picturing the ocean. What do you see? Do you see an animal, such as a fish or a shark? Do you see plant life, such as algae or seaweed? Do you see something a little bit less lifelike, such as shells or sand? Maybe you see something bright and colorful and beautiful. If the last option happens to be your answer, you are in luck because my speech today is on the Great Barrier Reef. This should be something that's significant to you because the Great Barrier Reef is a part of our neighboring ecosystem in the ocean. My speech is broken down into 3 easy to understand sections. I'll be beginning by giving some quick statistics and facts regarding the Great Barrier Reef to move forward into more complex points such as why the Great Barrier Reef is an asset and why it is so popular. And sadly, but because it is relevant, I'm going to be talking about some threats to the Great Barrier Reef in our ever-changing world where green gases and carbon dioxide emissions are even more popular now than they were 10 years ago. This makes this a relevant point. I'm asking you, the audience, as I begin my first point, to expect to learn a little bit more than just some pretty colors. The Great Barrier Reef is the most well-known and infamous coral reef in the world. This is partially due to the fact that it is the largest reef in the world. This one individual reef makes up about 10% of the world's coral reef systems, and this is according to the Australian government, meaning that this one Great Barrier Reef accounts for 10% of all the coral reef systems in the world. It is approximately 344,000 square kilometers in measurement in the terms of area. And to give some more perspective, this is roughly the size of Italy, and for more of an American approach, it's roughly about half the size of Texas. This reef, in fact, is so large that if you left this world, you would be able to see it from space. So just to give some perspective about how large this reef actually is. Because this reef is so large and so popular, it is one of the most intricate and complex ecosystems in the world. This reef individually houses about 600 different types of coral, and these coral are home to about 1,625 types of fish, about 133 different types of sharks and rays. Rays meaning like stingrays and man rays, different types of those, just to clarify what ray means because it's a little bit of an unfamiliar term. And this reef actually is broken into 3,000 individual reef systems. Because it is one large unit of the Great Barrier Reef, it also is divided into subdivisions, the amount of subdivisions being 3,000. Just to give another statistic to alarm you, the audience, about how large this reef actually is. The Great Barrier Reef actually goes beyond that of just the benefit of the ocean. It does great things for humans as well. The Great Barrier Reef plays a very important role in the economy of Australia, and I'll explain a little bit more of how it does this, even though it's completely aside from the land and in the ocean. It seems very unrelated to humans, but it actually does a lot of good. The Great Barrier Reef plays an important role in the economy of Australia because it creates jobs. Because it is so large and popular and infamous, it is a huge hub for tourism. It requires a lot of crowd control and manpower to operate. It creates about 39,000 direct jobs stemming straight from tourism, according to Deloitte Access Economics, which is a report actually written by the Great Barrier Reef Foundation on the Great Barrier Reef specifically and what it does for the economy. And it creates about 64,000 direct and indirect jobs, not all stemming from tourism. Aside from creating jobs, it generates substantial wealth, meaning that it produces about 6.4 billion in national economic contribution and 56 billion in asset value claimed by the country of Australia. These facts come from 2015 to 2016, so they are for the most part pretty relevant. I tried to search for the most relevant facts and nothing stemming more from a decade ago because they would not be as relevant as they are for something coming from 2015, 2016. The Great Barrier Reef, as I had mentioned before, is a social asset for Australia. It is one of the 7 natural wonders of the world, not to be confused with the wonders of the world, which is more man-made things, such as the Great Wall of China. This is something that's not man-made, entirely produced from Earth itself, making it something to be in awe of because the natural world did produce this. It has also been declared a World Heritage Site, which ups its importance, ups its fame, attracts more tourism, in turn producing more jobs and more wealth, which they actually do benefit each other, it being a social asset in what it does for the economy. And even though that the Great Barrier Reef, as I had just mentioned, is very beneficial to society, it also is, unfortunately, as I move into my next point, at risk of dying off. There are several reasons why the Great Barrier Reef is imposed to danger, and as I get into them, I also want to just clarify that majority of these reasons come from our ever-changing economy, which now in turn uses more fossil fuels and emits more greenhouse gases. The first threat that is posed to the Great Barrier Reef is coral bleaching. Coral bleaching is coming from rising water temperature. When the temperature of the water rises, the algae, which live upon the coral and sometimes give it its color, cannot live on the coral in these, in turn, risen water temperatures. The coral then expels the algae off of its body, giving it a more bland and less colorful appearance because the algae is no longer living on them. The next threat that is posed towards coral is acidification, which again gives it this bland, colorless, neutral look instead of the bright, colorful coral that we're used to. And acidification is a little bit different, but still results from, climate change, is when excess carbon dioxide is produced into the environment. Sometimes it is absorbed by the ocean. When the ocean absorbs the carbon dioxide, it causes a change in the acidification levels, making it a little bit more acidic in pH level than alkaline. This in turn makes the coral very bland looking. And as I near the end of my speech, I want to end it on a happier note, something a little less dark than the dying of coral reefs. So I just want to reiterate some of my points I had mentioned before to leave you with, that the Great Barrier Reef is a lot more than just pretty colors. It's very beneficial to the people and the economy of Australia. It is one of the 7 natural wonders of the world and a World Heritage Site. It has many unseen benefits aside, as I had mentioned before, from its pretty colors that just go unnoticed. And hopefully after hearing this speech, you will have learned a little bit more about this natural wonder. Make sure to carry this with you, and thank you.